and quite a bit of cotton to use, so I would do paper mache. And I am going to try to post a short video about how I make my paper mache paste just from flour and water, and I cook it on the stove top, just in case some of you haven't made it yourselves and you would like to be able to, because I know some people use glue water or they use Mod Podge, and I really like working with just the old-fashioned kind of just flour paste, and it's easy to do, but so anyway, I just thought I'd show that in case you haven't done it before. So I'm just going to get this covered, and we talked about kind of how the roof, if you do this hinged roof, doesn't lay completely flat, and the fabric will add like an additional layer of bulk that kind of prevents it from laying flat, but it's not, I don't feel like it's super noticeable or annoying, and so I feel like it's worth it to have that hinging ability. But if you're not into that and you want it to look kind of more normal and perfect, the roof line to look good, you could just not do the hinging roof and do the slot like we talked about, but then leave the bottom off so that you can actually kind of exchange letters in it if you want to. So anyway, I've got that covered in fabric, and then I'm working on the second kind of coating of cotton for my sparrows. And I know they're really tiny, and I know that some of you might think, oh, I don't think I can do that. I feel like miniatures are not as difficult as people assume they are, but if you're not comfortable or not as crazy about a really tiny size, just scale things up. It's, do what you like. Part of what is nice about a miniature is it just takes very little material and very little, or comparatively little, time to do it. And you don't have to be super detailed, because like how can, you can't worry a lot about, the head or the beak or any part of it, because there just isn't much to it. And the other thing is, if you're not into birds and you want to do mice or bunnies or something, it's just the same. I had made a couple miniature hens. I thought a little hen post office would be cute, but for this time, I just thought I'd stay with Tasha's original idea of sparrows just for this first one that I did. But I do have little mice that are the right size for this, and I have little kittens, and so you might even have, like, if you're not wanting to make the tiny little spun cotton figurines, you have other smallish things around the house, or maybe larger things, and you want to make a larger post office, just build your post office to the scale of whatever little animal or doll you want to use. And don't feel tied, or don't feel like, well, I don't really want to make the tiny sparrows, or I'm not into that. Just make it your own, because I think the idea of the post office is really fun, and you can just kind of take it in the direction that interests you. So I'm just shaping up her little face and adding some cotton bulk to the underside of the wings, just so that they're attached a little better, and you just pinch a little beak type shape and flatten out the tail a little bit. And you might want to look up like a bird, whatever. You don't have to make sparrows, obviously. Look up whatever bird you're making, or and just kind of check and make sure, because a lot of times I start shaping something or drawing something and realize that even though it's something I've seen like 1,000 times, I haven't really been a very good observer. And so I actually had a painting, an Edith Holden painting of sparrows on my wall that I was kind of referencing for their shape and kind of coloring, although I wasn't really, as that specific about their coloring. I just kind of made them tan with a white belly and some black stripes. But anyway, you might want to look it up. And this is the little one that's on a wire, so that she'll kind of stand, or I don't know what you would say. I guess just stand on the ground. So I'm just giving her a little bit more tail feather here. And while we're talking about like looking at pictures or whatever, that's kind of a fun place to start. If if you want to just follow the template or kind of go off of my design for this one, for this cottage, that's super. But I almost always, when I'm making a little, I make quite a few little, usually paper mache houses. This is the first one I've done with spun cotton. Although they start the same way, it's just different material on the outside. But I always do an image search. If you're a Pinterest person, you'll find all kinds of beautiful like cottages or things if you look it up. So I like to start with an image search just to get some inspiration, because you might just see some things that really get you excited and your imagination going. So that's what I would recommend doing before you get going, is just look a few things up and find some things that you really like and kind of go from there. And then I am going to show you one last sparrow here, which if you are having trouble getting the little wings shaped, or you just don't even want to try, just go ahead and use a little fabric scrap for the wing and just paint it on with a little glue. It works fine, it looks fine, and that's just a way to simplify it and save yourself a little time, or save yourself from pulling your hair out trying to get that little bit of cotton to stay on. Sorry if you're hearing kind of like extra noises. It's the dog's roughhousing in the next room, and also the cat's pushing something down the stairs. So anyway, that one will have little fabric wings. And then, let's see. Oh, when they're dry, and like I said, I like to just speed up the drying a little bit by putting them over a vent. But when they're dry, I just dab a tiny bit more glue on them, and then you can add a little dab of, a little piece of cotton over kind of the top where you had joined the fabric to the body. But with it this small, I think the extra glue is enough to hold it. You wouldn't have to put more cotton over the top. And then also, if you're going to paint it with acrylic paint, that will be pretty strong and hold it too. So there's that little fabric winged one. And then I'm going to start painting the cottage here. And like I said, you may do a paper mache cottage, you may want to try covering it with fabric, you may want to use watercolor on yours, but I'm doing acrylic craft paint today, and I'm just mixing several colors to get kind of a washed out peachy pink. And I get my paint pretty watery because I like it to be just not quite opaque, just a little bit more towards the, I guess it would be more like a I don't know, not watercolor gouache maybe type, I don't know, texture or whatever. So I like to be able to see a little bit of the fiber through the paint, and the batting that I used has a lot of plant fiber, plant material in it, and so when I'm done with this, I can still see like the dark spots of the like cotton stalk or the cotton kind of husk around the cotton fiber. So I kind of like that, but I mean, up to you. And I'm not going to show a lot of the painting process. I'm just going to show you getting a little bit of this first coat on, and then most of the detail work I did kind of off camera, and I used some acrylic paint kind of for the trim of the windows and doors that I painted on, and then I used watercolor for most of the details and shading, and I'll kind of talk about that later when I show the completed cottage. But anyway, you don't have to do any detail work on your cottage if you don't want to, if you don't feel like that's your strength, or you are afraid of messing it up. The only thing I would say is, like, don't be too scared. You might want to, even if you feel like you're not great at that sort of thing or don't have a lot of experience, especially if you're going to try it with acrylic paint, don't be too scared to just give it a shot to, paint some windows and doors on. You can start with little pencil outline if you want to. And actually, the other thing is you can just paint over it if it goes really badly and you don't like what you did. You can paint over it. It'll take a couple layers maybe to coat over what you did, but because I actually painted my front door and front window on the back side. I don't know how I did that, but I had to cover mine over and start again. So anyway, we'll come back to the painting, and now I'm gonna just show you how I make the tiny letters. So I use pages from an old book, and I like to have kind of a thinner, some old pages are really thick, which is nice for some things, and that, it's got just that really thick texture. It's a little easier to do these small envelopes with a thinner kind of almost slick feeling paper. And I just look for a page that has a blank side or a blank, a margin that you can use. And then I just make a little fold so right here I'm showing you how to make an envelope. You make a fold, and that'll be of the basic set, like, not length, but height of your envelope. And then you cut out the sides. So cut out a little square from each side. And you fold that up. And what you fold up will be the size of your envelope. And then you just cut at an angle, like a 45-degree angle, each side to fold over. Cutting this one at an angle. Okay, so I've got the two sides folded in at the angle, like an envelope looks. I don't think it would have to be a 45-degree angle, but whatever angle kind of fits the envelope you're making. And then you just cut in at the top and cut a little point. Or it could be like you don't have to have a point, you can do a square kind of tab that folds over. So you just kind of cut in to the width of your envelope and then make a little tab. If you can see. So there we've got our envelope shape, and then all you have to do is get a little glue on your little tabs that are cut at an angle. And glue those down, and make sure that you kind of, as you press those down, once you've got them pressed down, then kind of pop your envelope open to make sure that you're not gluing it shut to itself. So just kind of, so now I just popped it open there to make sure that I wasn't going to actually glue it shut, and then let it dry. And then once it's dry, you can make a little card or just a piece of paper or letter to go in it. I've just got a little blush pink envelope that I saved here because I thought the color was pretty, and I'm going to cut like a little card out of that. And then you can just kind of dream up whatever you want for designs or whatever you're going to write. I use I have used a dip pen in the past to write these. I sometimes use my very fine, like double O or triple O watercolor detail brush to write on them or do the cards. And you can also, if you have like an artist pen, like I use Micron, but there's other brands. Like I use the 005 size of the Micron pen. They also have an 003. I don't know I can't remember what that translates to in millimeters. It's tiny, tiny. So that will make it easier to write on these if you've got a very small pen, but you don't actually have, like in the past, I've just scribbled and it doesn't actually say anything. But on these, I used my tiny pen and actually wrote a few, you can't fit a lot, but, a name and a little message. So it's up to you whether you can just put a few hearts, or you can do some flowers on your card. And your envelope, if you have a small pen, you can actually address it to a person or a doll or an animal or whatever. Or you can just do kind of some scribbles to mimic what an envelope looks like. So I'm just painting a few designs here, and I enjoy doing these tiny little Valentines, or if it's a different time of year, just a letter or whatever. But I thought this was a fun part to do. I've done envelopes, tiny envelopes in the past, but I've never actually done like a design for a card inside of them. So it's kind of fun to see what you can fit on a tiny bit of paper. And obviously, like you've only got a few minutes in it. Here I've got Matilda just coming in like a giant on my table, knocking everything down. So sorry about that. She's just constantly up in my business. Bye bye, Matilda. Okay. And if this size, like I said, if this size is just intimidating or annoying or whatever, if it's not your thing, just scale it up. There's no reason that you've got to do something that's miserable or not, fun for you. This should be all about fun. So if you need to make it twice or 3 or 4 or whatever, however many times bigger, to do it or to enjoy it, then do that. It'll still be pretty tiny and fun. I mean, Tasha's Valentines, I don't think the ones I've seen were not quite this small, but they were fairly small. But anyway, we don't have to be just like Tasha Tudor or anyone. Just be yourself and make something that you like and you enjoy. So on this one, I think I ended up doing kind of my version of a folky design with some hearts and some little blue dots that were supposed to kind of be like forget-me-nots. And then I wrote Be Mine. This is a little Valentine for my daughter Nettie. So here I'm going to use my fine liner, I think some people call them. And I have to get my nose down on the table to see what I'm doing. So there's a shot of my head. I just wrote Be Mine because that was about all I didn't think I could fit like Valentine on this one. Okay, so here's my little envelope for Nettie's Valentine. And it's kind of, when you make it this small, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to pull it out without a tweezer. I didn't want to have to use a tweezer on camera because that's not very romantic, but I managed to get it out with my big fingers. And you can do you can cut out a tiny square to make a little stamp and make a postmark and just kind of, have fun decorating your envelopes and Valentines. And now so I pretty much have done all of the detail work on my post office at this point. And like I said, I used a little bit of acrylic paint for the white around the windows. And then I used a mix of acrylic and watercolor for the details and shading. And here I thought I would put a little sparrow silhouette up here at the top of my, I don't know, I should have looked up if this is called a frontispiece, or maybe I should just call it a sign, or I even wondered if marquee was the word. I've only really used that, or heard that used for like theaters that have a marquee, so I don't know if that's appropriate. But I just put a little sparrow silhouette or outline up here on my sign that says Sparrow Post. And you'll get to see a close-up of the post office. I kind of did the letters for Sparrow Post I did with my small paintbrush, and I put some kind of geraniums in the front window of the post office, so that's kind of fun. Like, I thought, oh, it would be neat to put like a cat looking out the window, but then I thought, well, that's kind of weird to have a tiny cat in the Sparrow Post Office, so I wasn't sure if that was weird. I didn't do it, but I might do it in another post office I make soon. I don't know. I don't know if that seems weird to anyone else, or if I should have done it, but so here we're just gonna paint our sparrows, which is a pretty easy paint job, I feel like, and you could use watercolor if you want to, but I'm using craft paint. It's just a little easier to get coverage with. Just a mix of kind of light browns and tans and some white. And I just do the back with the tannish brown. And I use, like I said, I usually use quite a bit of water so that it's pretty thin and it just kind of bleeds out into the cotton. And I always think that gives you a little it gives you a little more shading, I guess, and more softness in your painting rather than really hard lines, but that's just kind of a preference thing. So you just do the top with some brown. I think a bluebird post would be really pretty. I think it would be neat to do bluebirds or robins, especially like the kind of European, I don't know if it's called a European robin, but our American robins are nice, but I don't think they're as cute a bird as what I see in, in Europe, because they're just kind of a plumper bird and just a little cuter than our robins, which I think have kind of, I don't know, they're just not quite as charming a shape here in the US and Americas. So anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you that, but anyway, here I'm just gonna do a little bit of white, watered down white for the belly, and just kind of bleed it into your brown paint. And that's why it's nice to have it really wet, because they'll just kind of blend together in a more natural way. And then when it's dry, then that's when I will come in with a little watercolor on top, just black mixed with brown, and do just a couple little lines on the wings and tail to kind of mimic that pattern that sparrows have, where they've got a few kind of black stripes or whatever, black feathers on their wings, and or maybe they're dark gray, I don't know, but just do a little bit of that. And if you want to do your, different than this, just do that. I've never really made birds before, I don't think, so this is one of my first times, besides hens, making birds. And also you'll add your little eye when it's dry, and maybe put a tiny bit of detail on the beak or something. Then I'll do this one just the same. So nothing very complicated here, just get your paint pretty wet, and I think that's easier to get coverage that way and to get it to go into the cotton fibers. Sometimes if you use the acrylic paint straight with no water, it just kind of sits on the top of your cotton, and it just looks, and then when it dries it looks kind of like crusty and hard, and that's not my favorite look. So the wetness of, if you know, if adding the water to your paint is what's going to help it absorb down into your fibers and just look a little softer and more natural. Okay, we're almost done. You might not, doesn't look like it at this point on my work table because everything's still a mess, but we're really close to having all the parts completed. So I'm just coming in now. Our sparrows are dry, and I'm just going to do the details. So add a few little eyes and some kind of darker feathers. I just draw a little line with some watercolor. I don't do anything very fancy, but it's enough to, I think, show you that there's, you know, indicate that there's supposed to be a sparrow. So there's going to be a big jump here. Before the next clip, you're going to think, how did we get from here to there? But really, we've done it all. We've got our, you know, we've got our post office painted. We've got our little letters and valentines made. And now we're going to have our sparrows made. And the only thing that I didn't show you how to do was to just poke a little hole with a needle in your sparrow and add a piece of wire and then attach that to a base. These are all things that I think you're capable of doing on your own if you want a little sparrow flying like you're going to see here in a couple seconds. So we've got everything done, and here is what it looks like when my table's cleaned up and I've kind of got it set up, you know, the way you would put it on your table or shelf or however you want to display it. So here is our Sparrow Post inspired by Tasha Tudor. We've got our little flying sparrow. He's on a wire, and I hot glued a little letter to his mouth. So he's the one that will always be carrying a letter. The others I just left loose so that we could, you know, play with them and open them and look at them. I did address all my letters this time to little animals on our sanctuary. So that one's for Sealy Hen. And I added a few of my animals that I had that were kind of to the scale of the cottage. So we've got a little Sniffy, our house rabbit, you can see, and one of the kitties that might be Pumpkin or Apricot, the kitty. And here we're going to take our little letter out and open it up. Who's this one too? Oh, this is for True the donkey. Sweet old True. We don't know how old True is, but she came to us with big flipper feet, and we got her feet fixed up, and now she's as happy as a donkey can be that I know. Donkeys are happy in a grouchy way, I would say, usually. But she's sweet, we love her. And here I did a few little forget-me-nots for True. So, there we've got our little magical little Sparrow Post. And thank you so much for being with me today, and I hope that you make some really fun and joyful things. Happy making to you.